So it taught me, grit, perseverance, continuing with the project for years when it didn't really exist until you get that first maybe check, the first few users, the first bit of traction that then snowballs and makes just an idea, a vision of how you want society and people to interact until it becomes a reality. It's just an idea in your head. And I think seeing how much time and effort it takes to have that translation from your brain to the real physical world was really, really humbling.
Welcome to Tribe Talk, where we alternate between current and next-gen changemakers to demonstrate that age doesn't impact the quality of one's work. I'm here today with Samin Bhan, the founder and CEO of Lookupp. Samin, thank you so much for being on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's a privilege.
Well, Samin, before we get started, I want to mention that Tribe Talk is sponsored by Raise, a mobile-first platform powering individual activism, corporate giving, and nonprofit volunteerism. So download Raise on Google Play or the App Store to give, volunteer, and connect.
Tribe Talk is a streamer studio production. Stream your podcast, stream your story, stream yourself. Try it free at streamr.nyc. Make your voice, brand, and message seen and heard on every platform today.
Well, listen, I know that we internally have done our due diligence and, of course, accepted you into the next cohort of Tribe. But I'd love for you to share a little bit about your start, of course, running a foundation for now almost 5 years, and why you got started with it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a lot of reasons and events that led me to start this, but as always, it's multifaceted. But one of the main stories that I remember that exposed me to the space of mental health and screen addiction was around 8th or 9th grade when all my friends and we'd all gotten phones and we had this weekly tradition at Keg and Egg, our local brunch spot. I noticed that pre-phones, there was laughter, there was storytelling, there was smiles, conversation. And post getting phones around the start of high school, I noticed those same Sunday brunches felt very, very different. We were, right next to each other, but not really there, not very present. And I noticed that that wasn't just an isolated phenomenon. That was actually very, very common, not just in that general restaurant as I looked up, but in other cases as well, with students in school, people in meeting rooms, at the dinner table with family. This was such a recurring phenomenon. And it was one of the first moments that I was truly exposed to phubbing and phone use in social interaction and that led to me to want to research a little bit more as to is this a harmless, innocent thing, or is this something that's important? Because it didn't make me feel good, but I didn't know why. And so I kept researching into it and saw some pretty scary results as to how this use of phone usage and social interactions can cause all these downstream effects in mental health and is contributing to things like the loneliness crisis, increased anxiety, depression, mental health, etc. So that was really my first start. And as I entered high school, I had the choice to join clubs, Science Olympiad, etc., do all these things. And I decided that rather than investing my time in a standard, club, I wanted to aggregate my time towards a project or something that I can see have tangible impact on the people around me, and that could be kind of my legacy, and I could work every year towards, not just a competition or a medal that I get that's stopped right there and capped. So that's kind of where I thought of the idea of Lookupp after a year or two of research as to how we can tackle this issue, and that led me to start Lookupp.
Incredible. So, still, to build something and grow it and to decide that you want to go on your own, to be entrepreneurial, or I guess in our case, feel entrepreneurial, right? Why did you create it as a nonprofit?
Yeah. It's a great point. I think in my particular case, I was driven by the fact that I wanted to help people and I wanted to help my friends and family and those around me. And I felt that the best way to make this project scalable and expand and have the type of impact that I wanted was to make it a nonprofit. And I felt increasingly that in our generation, young people want to support and are all for supporting these, entrepreneurial ventures much more than for profit things. As there's always a disalignment of interest. You have let's say VCs, you have people you have to provide money back to, et cetera. But with a nonprofit, you have a lot more leeway in what you can and can't do, and you can optimize for what I felt was the right things.
Right. I think to me, there's so much value in not worrying about quarterly cycles or earnings, especially when the core of your work is addressing an externality, right? You shouldn't be making money off of people's suffering and addiction, right? You're addressing something for the anxious generation, like Jonathan Haidt would say in his book. And so to me, to allow yourself to explore that through a philanthropic lens, to be aligned more with your partners and peers because they know there's no extractionary value is beautiful.
Absolutely.
What type of lessons have you learned in exploring this type of work?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned is that doing anything in the real world is really, really hard. It's not like your traditional club or science olympiad or a beta club, whatever, where you have a finite scope task, but rather when you embark on a venture, you can just put infinite time, infinite energy, money into what feels like a black hole in a void that may not give you dividends and show you the results that you think you should be getting. And so it taught me, grit, perseverance, continuing with the project for years when it didn't really exist until you get that first maybe check, the first few users, the first bit of traction that then snowballs and makes just an idea, a vision of how you want society and people to interact. Until it becomes a reality, it's just an idea in your head. And I think seeing how much time and effort it takes to have that translation from your brain to the real physical world was really, really humbling, and an experience that I couldn't have gotten if I had spent my time in high school doing any other kind of standard, you know, uh, join a standard institution.
There's no sense of grit that you get unless you're the person kind of structuring the box, right? Defining what it can look like instead of being defined by what others think it can be or already is. So, absolutely. Cool. And tell me about the way that you've built this out. Of course, like many others that we've met, you have a family bond connected to this. So how has that been working with your family, with your brother in scaling and growing this out?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so my brother Bhan joined as a co-founder as well. He's a few years younger than me. And I think a lot of it came from the fact that I was reading these papers, the research on what the importance of in-person interaction and how it's dwindling. And I think with knowledge and information comes a lot of power. And once you have that knowledge and you know how we're being affected by the algorithm, by social media, by technology, et cetera, in a negative way. And there's people above us that have different goals they're optimizing for that aren't necessarily our best interest or mental health in mind. That type of information is very powerful and carries weight. And I think just being, having that in my family household, having those conversations all the time was what led my brother to also join the project and become a co-founder, and for us to continue to work together.
And what about in terms of building something with your brother and continuing on now that you're in college and separated, how has that developed your relationship with also your friends and those that at first you're together and then you are together and yet separated by technology and this tool, and now that you're working on something to bring yourselves back together, does that allow or empower more connection when you're around people? Are you known as that don't show your phone with this person guy, or how does that work?
Yeah. No, that's a great point. Yeah, I mean, my friends and I would use it all the time, and we'd get certain rewards and things, gift cards, et cetera, for using it together. And I noticed my friends were definitely way more mindful. And I think the moment that really clicked for me was when they would initiate a lookup zone, and they would want to use it when they were around me or someone else, their friends. And I think the beautiful thing was seeing how I started it in my high school, but seeing the usage patterns trickle down beyond just the classroom setting and into just students using it with their parents or getting their friends to download it, and they used it outside the classroom. Seeing that trickle down effect was really where I felt like we had something with this. And yeah, I am kind of known as the guy that's never on his phone, doesn't have social media, always, trying to give you 100% when I'm talking to you. I'm always there. I think a large, testament to that is because I joined this project and developed this.
Isn't it incredible that something that would be commonplace, 20 years ago, is now something that makes you unique, just because they didn't exist back then? Wow. Well, I feel very grateful that we are still able to discover you in the sense of the work you're doing and what you're passionate about, because as an engine, we want to provide the visibility, the credibility, so that you can just focus on the work, the mission that you're doing to create more lookup zones to ensure people look up, right? It's kind of pen and parcel with the name. When you look at what the future holds, though, for you, right? You're in an incredible spot in college. You have an incredible runway ahead of you. You are very, very talented and astute. So what do you see as the future of this type of organization?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one really important thing I think will become the future and will integrate into kind of commonplace culture with this project will be the idea of, you know, how good are you at interacting in person and not using your phone with other people? We think that's going to be a really, really important kind of health metric, and we're calling it like a lookup score. How good are you at being present and interacting face to face with the people around you? And I think this like presence score, lookup score, is going to be integrated into a lot of aspects of our life, and it's going to be something you want to flex, something you want to brag about, and it's a metric that I think will not only be cool and hopefully a cultural trend, but also just a health metric as to how's your mental health. I think that's going to be super important, and that's where I envision part of this project going. And secondly, just more tangibly, I think we want to have lookup zones and lookup spots all across college campuses. Um, we've pivoted a little bit away from high schools due to a lot of red tape, et cetera, of working with under minors and things of that nature. But we think our landing point will be college campuses. It has such a unique ecosystem of people and a rewards infrastructure that we can capitalize on with retail items. There's coffee shops on campus, there's clubs you can partner with, there's the college campuses themselves are super willing to provide rewards, event tickets, sporting tickets, etc., merch, all these things that they'll provide for free because it's supporting the general student well-being of their college campus. So we think the college campus will be one of the unique ecosystems that we can really tap into. And for the future, I envision this lookup score and lookup zones being a trend across college campuses.
Amazing. And I really appreciate the fact that in my head, whereas some people would say, well, you're making this conditional, you're making socializing conditional. To me, there is a huge majority of people who will appreciate that this exists, but not necessarily need it or use it without wanting to cash in. But to expand the range and the barrier of people who can get involved, create that holistic like commons effect, that the majority of people will come through, you'll hit this time where now everybody's involved, not just those who already care, but those who don't traditionally care, but now have developed a habit because they appreciate that there is benefits they receive from doing good things.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's part of why we're going to succeed is because our reward infrastructure and just the whole infrastructure thesis of the nonprofit is that we need to integrate as many people as we can, whether you're a user or whether you're providing to the reward system and you're a parent or a teacher or institution, you are involved in Lookup and in some way. And I think that's going to be super important if we want to integrate it into the cultural fabric of young people. And to your point about the rewards, I think the rewards are an interesting way to draw people in. And I think, with addiction, if you want to call it, there's this idea of replacement behavior. You need to have something to replace those tendencies. And I think the in-person interaction and the benefits you get from the interaction are what's going to keep people to stay and keep using it until you build that habit. And so yeah, so it's a really interesting cycle that we're testing out and playing with, and we're super excited about. Specifically, the concept of, I guess, the social validation aspect to it is super important too, that you can only start a lookup zone and gain points when you're around other people. This isn't like your traditional screen time app where you can just, your traditional screen time app is not context aware, right? You can reach your time limit, but you could be alone at home, right? And that's not as effective versus lookup it's specifically nudging you to interact in the moments where you have the opportunity to engage face to face. Those are the moments that matter more to be present and to be off your phone. So we don't really frame it as a general screen time app. It's really a people time app, and it's meant to help facilitate and make easier and build the habit of in-person connection.
Well, wait a minute. You did say something very interesting. Your app is contingent or dependent on those that are around you. And so instead of those that would struggle because they're rewarding you for independent action, oh, you're socializing, you put your phone away, but you're asleep. Now instead, because you're around others, context specific, you can receive benefits and foster the type of community that helps the whole. Right? The community that they want at the coffee shop so that it attracts more users, the community they want at the college campus so that it attracts better student life. And that type of conversation that you can bridge when people aren't isolating means that you'll have less macro problems.
Bingo, bingo. You nailed it.
Cool. Have you thought about, I mean, you have an incredible niche. You have a lot of teams. Tell me about like when you host a Lookupp party. Tell me about the experience of that.
Yeah. I think it's for someone who hasn't used Lookup before. Can be a little bit of a struggle at first, where you realize and really you get exposed to how much you really do pick up your phone in these social contexts, and you realize how much, wow, I really am on this too much. And it makes you think, hey, right now, do I really need to answer that text? Is it really that important right now? Do I really need to take that call? It forces you to grapple with your priorities and your time. And in our case that we've seen, people, they reevaluate their priorities after being in multiple lookup zones, and building that habit of now, maintaining this, maintaining the zone or being in it and gaining points for a certain length of time. They start to realize that everything can wait a little bit. And I think that's been a really interesting phenomenon we've seen. And it's really awesome that we can have this tool that exposes that to people and shows them that they can interact with people differently. There's a world in which that text can wait.
Yeah, I think that to encourage people to be more in person and recognize that the tasks that they have online, which they are programmed by other companies to want to need to do, to be addicted almost to them, that you can put those away and spend more time. You need the inverse. You need that positive reinforcement loop, that social benefits, that social capital benefit of being around others. How about for yourself? I mean, you mentioned earlier you're not really on social media. How do you feel in terms of your connectivity to others?
Yeah. I think it's helped a lot, to be honest. It's been a few years now, and I think it's helped me be a lot more present, more intentional with my time. And the cool part is now that this is kind of a movement. Like, I might have started a little bit earlier, but this is not new anymore. I mean, there's a club on campus here at Stanford called Reconnect now that just started, where they do mass social media deletions and they do phone-free hikes and things of that nature. And Lookup is an initiative under them that they're working to promote. I think it's a trend now to be off social media. I mean, just the other day I was looking at one of the it's called Date Drop. It's like a algorithm you use to like get matched with people. And one of the questions was, how much of a green flag is having no social media? And I think before, 5-10 years ago, not having a social media was a little bit of a red flag. Like, oh, are you under a rock? Like, I definitely used to get that a lot. But now when I say, hey, I don't have Instagram, or like someone asks me for my Snapchat and I say, oh, I don't have any social media, you can take my number instead. It's almost like, oh, that's so awesome. Like, I wish I could do that. Like, I've been trying to do that. I've been trying to get off it. And I think that's largely due to the awareness that young people have now of these larger systemic, decisions that are being made for us by, like you said, being programmed by people with a lot more money and talent and engineering ability that are not necessarily optimizing for our well-being. So I think with that awareness has led to just this awesome movement of young people being much more aware of that phenomenon. And we see that with digital well-being and mindfulness clubs starting on college campuses all across the US.
I'm totally going to steal the idea of a phone-free hike, or any time that you're in a dangerous situation but without technology. I mean, in high school, I left and went to a place called the Mountain School, and it was a farm in Vermont. And for the first month, we all turned in our phones, and we lived on a farm, and it was like 400 maybe acres, something like that. Huge, expansive territory to get to know 44 other kids and learn about the natural environment. It's not just to me about socializing with other people, it's kind of socializing or connecting with your environment instead of getting trapped in your own world. So to me, I mean, how cool that there are other clubs and programs getting set up, that you are poised at such a great time. And your idea is great because before people fully go phone free, which I don't think is necessarily always beneficial, there needs to be times when they can utilize it for good.
Absolutely, absolutely. And our thesis is that there are certain moments when it matters most, when you need to use it and not use it. And I think with technology, with social media, with AI, like the genie's out of the bottle and it's hard to put back in. These are tools that have been integrated into our lives, and it's a lot of good and there's a lot of bad. And you have to be able to have a good relationship with it, a healthy relationship, but it's not going away. I think that's the understanding. So that's where Lookup came in, is that how can we facilitate these better digital habits in these moments that matter most?
Yeah, and what a privilege to be able to ask someone, hi, it's great to meet you. I don't have any social media presence, I just have presence. And if you're willing to spend time with me, I'm willing to give my all during that time for you. That's beautiful.
I love it. I love it.
So when you look at your brand, your identity going forward, do you feel like you will face any challenges in the future because you have labeled yourself as against the interests of, like you said, these large, wealthy conglomerates that are, yes, not in the interest of those decades of years younger than them using their product, but instead in their quarterly returns?
Yeah, it's a great point. I don't think blaming anyone is effective. And I think that we're not anti-tech. We're not anti-social media. We're not anti, big tech, et cetera. We're just an org that's trying to help you build more face-to-face connection and be more present with those around you. And we are not trying to claim anything else. We just recognize that we have this data, young people are struggling. What can we do to fix it? And that's where our org comes in, hosting Lookup events, facilitating the spread of the Lookup app, and allowing people to more easily create these zones, and tying in the infrastructure, the reward system in your local community to be able to provide you with incentives to continue. We're trying to just align basically a bunch of incentives towards the same thing that most people want, which is healthy, happy, not lonely young people. So I wouldn't say that I'm worried about any other organizations, being against us, because we're not against them. In all reality, we're not anti-tech. We're just pro-connection.
Right. Not anti-tech, pro-connection, from someone who loves to spend their time in person and be intentional about it and appreciates how people are. I mean, I appreciate that you're not, you mentioned there are other groups or clubs like the social media deletion apps or things. And I think that there's always an ease in labeling a problem and even separating it. But you are labeling a solution and encouraging people towards that. And I love that positive lens.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We don't want any negativity here. We just want to provide a tangible solution, small, that could be scalable and enter people's lives kind of seamlessly, and just reward this behavior, so we can honestly just increase that in-person interaction per week. I mean, if you look at the data, it's decreased per week by around 7 hours per week. If we could even just increase that by 2 or 3 hours and reclaim 2 or 3 hours per week of your in-person interaction, that's going to have a significant effect, and it's going to act as a significant shield and barrier towards the negative mental health effects that we see with a decrease of in-person interaction.
Yeah, I did not know that it was so significant. I mean, that's what, 5% of our week being taken away because of social media. I would argue that some people, if you look at their phones and it tells how much time they're online, it'd be much higher. So as well as when people are together, they have their phones on the table or in their pocket that they're holding in their pocket or nearby. I'm curious, have you noticed that there is this deep, have you had anybody not like Lookupp?
It's a good question. I think there's been people that have been hesitant to try and fully engage with Lookup. Um, I think the counter to that is we've always dropped Lookup, facilitated it in social settings. Let's say, for example, the first use case we did was classrooms where the teacher has some form of involvement, free, academic extra credit, homework pass, whatever was integrated, and you had majority of their students participating. And so you had this social positive peer pressure, like, hey, let's do it, let's get this, let's work together on achieving this. That has really helped. So maybe people didn't like it at all, but they maybe weren't as expressive about it. There's a little bit of positive peer pressure against it. So yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. What are you grateful for in general? You're doing something incredible and you're getting a lot of visibility from very incredible people, large figureheads that are looking at you and saying, well, I'm doing the same work. This next generation individual has so much purpose and passion. What are you grateful for all this?
Yeah. I mean, it's a good question. I have to think about it. There's so many things, so it's hard to pick one. That's why I have to think about it. I would say I'm grateful for the support and the general trend of awareness that we're having. It's made this battle less of an uphill battle, where 10 years ago it would have been kind of impossible to probably have these conversations. We didn't have enough data and research, et cetera. But the timing has made things correct. And I'm grateful for people such as Jonathan Haidt and all of the other researchers and people who are interested in this space and not just accepting tools and tech given to us at face value, but questioning, hey, will this benefit us long term? That community is probably what's led this to be possible and led me to be able to continue this journey. And that includes some of my supporters, such as Young Futures, is an organization that is giving money and support and mentorship, just like Tribe, to orgs, nonprofits specifically, who are looking to help the mental health of young people, and they're in the responsible tech space. That these orgs didn't exist, 10 years ago. So I guess I'm grateful for everyone that's involved in creating this trend of awareness, and um, everyone that's involved in promoting the critical thinking of, hey, let's see what we can do about this. Let's not just accept what's happening at face value. All those people, there's so many of them, from researchers to activists to entrepreneurs. There's a large group in this responsible tech mental health space that I'm super grateful for. They motivate me to keep going.
That's beautiful. I mean, certainly you motivate so many others to keep going too. It's a privilege that for your very focused niche, you show up for others. And I'm excited for when that showing up is not over screens, but in person, especially with the cohorts coming together in September and for other summits. So really, thank you for just having so much intention and drive to create a more connected world, which I'm using that phrase not ironically, but intentionally, because that is a phrase that we used for other tools, and yet we've switched over.
Absolutely.
Well, that's I think all of that. I have to say, I mean, I'm blown away by how crystal clear you are in your work and your intention, in your actions. It is rare to meet someone, although not necessarily rare in the circles that we are, but very rare in general to meet someone so driven in one direction and knowing exactly how they can get there, exactly why they've started, and exactly what it means for them to continue that work, what keeps you sleeping less but sleeping better, or perhaps in your case, especially because you're avoiding social media, sleeping more. So just, yeah, thank you for being present. And thank you for hopping on this call with us while not in person to share your experiences that we can promote to encourage others, not only to inspire them to set out and do projects on their own accord like you have and build something that helps their world instead of just their local environment, but also to be so present and ensure that the next generation is focused on each other instead of their technologies.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Kyle. I really appreciate you inviting me here. And I want to say one more thank you to you and the rest of the tribe team for supporting me on this path. Without people like you guys, it would be so hard to continue. So really a lot of the credit goes to you guys as well and the team. So thank you so much.
Yeah, it's a privilege to know that there is someone that we can help continue, like you. Cheers.
Thank you.
Tribe Talk is a Streamer Studio production. Try Streamer free at streamr.nyc. Executive producer David Walters, videography and editing by David Walters, graphic design by Tristan Bresnan, music by Benjamin Senmana, hosted by Kyle Mathis. Tribe, taking root today to advance tomorrow.